Rule 3 says we use a comma between each word or adjective in a list. Each noun or adjective in a list. We know what nouns are. Kids, I suppose we know these two parts of speech. Noun that names a person, place, thing, etc. Adjective, words that describe nouns, okay? Now, if you have these words in a list, for example, you say noun, I want to name nouns like Sham, Lean, Salma. These are nouns in a list, okay? Adjectives in a list could be beautiful, smart, scary. I want to put these adjectives in a list, okay? I use a comma, but there's a tricky thing to do there before the last word, and let's move on to see. It says we use and not, you see this and, okay, please don't get confused. We use and not a comma before the last noun or adjective in a list. So let's see what they mean. This is a sentence example. It says our canteen has many tables, chairs and benches. Now these are nouns in the list: table, chair and bench, okay? So after the first noun in the list we'll put a comma. Tables, comma, chairs. Now, we don't put a comma here because there's only one word remaining in the list. And before that last word in the list, we do not use comma and together. We use only and. Please take note of this. Tables. I've said this before in class. I think it was one of the days I wrote a sentence in class and I put and. And that day, I remember particularly, there weren't words in the list, there were phrases in the list. And I tried to explain this to, I think it was Sophie who posed that question to me. Teacher, why didn't you put a comma and then and? And I told you because it's not an independent sentence, it's not an independent clause, okay? And I said, be patient, you're going to find out in more details when we get to that grammar lesson. And this is it here today, okay? So because there are words in the list, we're not putting a comma. All right, before the last one, we only use and. Now let's see adjectives in the list: shy, quiet, thoughtful. So after the first adjective in the list, we put a comma. Now this is the second adjective in the list. Before the third one and the last, we don't use a comma, we only use and. Please take note, okay? Words like nouns and adjectives in a list, we use commas, but when we get to the last word in the list, we only use and. Now, rule 4, it says we use a comma to separate phrases in a list. Phrases in the list. Now, what is a phrase? What is a phrase? If this were a traditional classroom, this is the point where I enjoy asking you questions, because most of these things are things I've said to you before, things I say in passing, things that have been brought up by a certain explanation I've had to do in a different subject or aspect of English. And then these are the times where I test how attentive you've been or you'd been in situations like that in the past. But however, I'll move on. A phrase is a group of words that do not have a subject-verb combination. Think of it as in subject-verb agreement, okay? Now, if I have, this is phrases to help you understand clauses. To help you understand phrases. Look at their counterparts, which are clauses. If I have a clause, I have a subject at the beginning of my sentence, and I have a verb following it. And I apply subject-verb agreement. Here I have subject-verb combination. But if I have a phrase, they're just group of words. But those group of words do not contain subject-verb combination and certainly have no complete meaning. Okay? Let's see what I mean by group of words without subject-verb combination, as in definition of phrase. Because here I start again. It says we use a comma to separate phrases in a list. We use and not comma before the last phrase in the list. Just these two rules are the same. The only difference is here they're talking about nouns and adjectives in a list. Here they're talking about phrases in a list. But the rule about using a comma but before the last word or phrase in the list, you do not use a comma, you only use an and. The same thing. That will help you narrow it down and make it easier for you to remember. Now let's see what they mean by phrases, group of words. Jane drew a small house, comma, a tree beside the house, and a bird in the tree. Now you see, a small house, a group of words. Do we see any subject and verb here? No. A small house, just a group of words without a subject-verb combination. Now, this is the first phrase. In a list of phrases here, there are 3 phrases here. 1, 2, 3. Now let's see. After the first phrase, we use a comma. The second phrase says a tree beside the house. See, we still have a group of words with our subject verb combination. Now before the last phrase, we don't use comma and, we only use and. Okay, just as in the rule here. So we only use and before the last phrase. That brings us to the end of this lesson. Solve all the practices. You know the drill. You know what I expect you to do afterwards. Send in proof of work and wait patiently for answers to be uploaded much later. I've got confirmation from everybody. Okay, so good luck, girls.